We'll now ask Peter, if you could, to do the introductions.
Thank you, Norm. Welcome to everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome both Dave and Cathy here this evening. I know Dave very well. I don't remember if I've ever met Cathy face to face before. I'm sure, Cathy, you were part of the 2015 General Assembly, and I remember the presentations going on. I don't remember meeting you, so it's nice to see you here online. Welcome to London Center. I will let Dave say a few nice things about you. He already has, but maybe some more, because I'll just say to tell everyone who's participating, who's attending this evening, a little bit about Dave. Dave's been a member of the RASC for a very long time. I remember Dave's presence in the RASC back in the 1980s. Dave was one of the first, I think he was the very first winner of the Simon Newcomb Award, which at the time was given for an essay competition. And I remember I entered that essay competition when Dave Chapman won. So his essay was better than mine. So that's a good sign right off the bat. And over the years, Dave's been editor of the Observer's Handbook for, was it 5 years or 10 years, Dave? 5, yeah. I thought it should have been 10. We shouldn't have let you go so soon. But that ended just a few years ago. So Dave's, I think you're the immediate past editor, aren't you?
That's correct. I think James Edgar is doing his 5th now, I think.
Yeah.
And he's going to.
So anyway, and then more recently, the latest news, besides all the good times and times that Dave and I have shared a beer over the years, the latest news is that Dave was selected as a fellow of the RASC. So it's a very small group of folks who have demonstrated that they have dedicated their lives to improving astronomy in many ways, but not limited to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. So welcome to that, Dave, and congratulations on your selection. And I'm now going to let you and Cathy take over. I'm not sure if Norm or Heather need to do anything to let you share your screens, but away you go. Nice to have you here.
Well, thanks very much, Peter. The London Center does have a special fascination for me because it's an important center in the RASC, and many of our leaders came from the London Center, such as yourself when you were president, and other people who have had a big role in the RASC. But also, it is the birthplace of the Royal Astronomical Society of Daves. That's where RASD started. Because there were so many people named Dave in the center that they started numbering them. But that sort of exploded out of the center, and now we have 34 members of the RASD all around the world, and I'm Dave 17. So the London Center has a special meaning to me. So it's fun to be here. As far as Cathy is concerned, Cathy and I started working together about 7 years ago. We met at Kejimkujik National Park, a National Historic Site, when she was a cultural interpreter there. And I was there helping to set up a dark sky preserve. And so we had many opportunities to work together on that project. And we worked together putting on dark sky weekends. And then after a little while, she asked me to do a special project with her. And it kind of, without going into all the details, it became the Mi'kmaq Moons Project. She's a member of the Acadia First Nation here in Nova Scotia. She's no longer at the park, but her whole life is around the Mi'kmaq people, and especially young people, and teaching and that kind of thing. And the work we've done together has been very special to us. We've got a special relationship, and we'll say a little bit about that in Two-Eyed Seeing. Did you want to say anything more, Cathy, about your background?
I'd first like to say hello to the RASC family. I, 7 years ago, was just learning about astronomy, and the family took me in quite quickly and was my first audience for presenting this material. So they were very kind, and I always talk to Dave about how much that kindness means to me, and we'll never forget where we've come from, which is the first time in Halifax presenting to a large group. And they've allowed us to share ever since. So it was 2015, was it not, Dave, that we presented at the General Assembly, was it not?
Yeah.
And that was, and I would say, Peter, you probably didn't meet me because you probably would have remembered that presentation if you would have saw it. It has, it's guided and led the way for Dave and I, and it was a very exciting night, and it was great to share our friendship and the information that we shared together to that group, and it's something I'll never forget, and the treatment that I had that night I will also never forget. So I, as Dave said, was a cultural interpreter and supervisor at Ketchikan for a long time. And then I worked on behalf of Acadia First Nation in the Recreation Department. And now I help and guide students who are First Nation and or of African descent in education. So my passion, as Dave said, for teaching culture and sharing culture with young people is something I've done my whole life. So I went to St. Thomas University in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and have a arts degree, double majoring in Native Studies and criminology. I'm not sure what the criminology part was all about, but I was very interested in that, and come to find out it's been very useful in my current job. So Dave, would you like me to introduce our video now?
Yeah, let me just share the screen and make sure that we can get going here.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find my screen. Can everyone see my title screen? Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, you're good. We can see you.
Good. So yeah, so you have to say a few words. Normally, Cathy gives a little reading at the beginning of our presentations, but lately we're starting to include Cathy's niece, Holly, who's a very important part of our project now. So I'll let Cathy say a few words about Holly, and then we'll get Holly to introduce the talk.
Yeah, I'm hoping Holly's watching because you messed up a little bit there. She loves that. That's her favorite part, when you're messing around.
Not to tonight.
Yeah, as Dave said, I always open with a reading. I have since we have started working together. And one of the things that I have done this last little bit in Zoom is pass that torch on to my niece, Holly. And she is she is the third partner in this project with Dave and I. And up until about a year ago, she knew that we were experiencing this and that I was talking, about the moon times with her. But she didn't really know that she was part of the presentations that we give. So she just turned 13 years old. And what you're seeing there is a photo shoot that we did last month with Christine Riker. And yeah, they're amazing photos. And we will let Holly open this talk today.
Okay, Holly, if you're out there, this is where I mess up and you get a big laugh. So let's try this. So this is a little video we shot over Zoom. And I hope that this is going to work. You see my ugly face there? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Birds of fire are the stars that sing. Sing with our light. We are the birds of fire. We fly over the sky. Our light is a voice. We make alert spirits for the spirits to us. Among us are 3 hunters. We chase a bear. Never was a time they were not hunting. We look down on the mountains. This is the song of the stars.
Well, thank you, Holly. We're hoping to get a better version of that soon, but it is on our YouTube channel. We'll give you the address for that later. So that was the Song of the Stars, and it's a sort of a traditional poem. And now what we're going to do is we're going to get Cathy to tell you what two-eyed seeing is all about. This is very crucial to our project. Cathy.
Mm-hmm. You know, two-eyed seeing has developed for Dave and I. We came together, as Dave said, through a presentation I was asked to do, and they asked me to tell the story of Moon and the 7 bird hunters, and I had done programs like that many times before and was very comfortable. And then they asked me to pick out the constellations. And that's where I knew I was going to need some help. So I called up Dave, and we worked together, and he taught me the astronomy part of the legend, and I taught him the cultural part. And then we just started working together and went from there. And two-eyed seeing is the Western knowledge and cultural teachings coming together and understanding stories and legends and what's happening in nature, what's happening above us. And it is so important to me in living my life that I have a way of seeing things and feeling things, and to let, you know, people who I trust, Dave being one of them, to take me further into my understanding is something that I appreciate so much. And I think with two-eyed seeing, the number one thing, and it's what I'm teaching the educators that I work with today, is to create a safe space for both people to learn. So, you know, Dave and I, in our work, it's a very safe space to be able to ask any questions and to be honest about things. And, you know, it's taken us a long time to get to this point where we can present in a way in which we both get our point of view across and have conversations where we both get our ideas and points across. And what it comes down to is respecting each other's way of seeing and knowing. And because of that, we are both in a place where, you know, you don't stop learning. There's always something new culturally. And Dave keeps surprising me with astronomy and more of it. And so I will wrap that up by saying that coming together from two very different backgrounds and two very different ways of seeing and knowing, if you create, again, that safe space and the respect, there's so much that we can learn from each other. So I will leave with that and let Dave, you talk about the astronomy of the stars.
Well, thank you, Cathy. That was a very good introduction to two-eyed seeing, and it's really the philosophy or the worldview that we carry on through the whole project. Holly spoke of the hunters and the bear, and here's a diagram from a Maliseet moon calendar. Now, the Maliseet are not the Mi'kmaq, but they're like the next door neighbors. They live in the sort of the St. John Valley area, and maybe some of them live in Maine. And this calendar came out of St. Thomas University, where actually Cathy went to school. And this diagram shows 3 human hunters chasing the bear, which is interesting. It's a variation of the story. So we've got the bear is the bowl of the Big Dipper, and the 3 stars in the handle of the Big Dipper are the 3 hunters. But the version that is known in Nova Scotia is called Moon and the 7 Bird Hunters. It's a different story. And it uses the stars in Ursa Major, Boötes, and Corona Borealis. So just about the most common thing about these variations is that the dipper, the bowl of the dipper is basically the she-bear Moon. Now, we can't tell the whole story in this talk. All we can do is give you, sort of introduce the characters. And we invite you, we have a YouTube channel where you can go and watch the entire story being narrated. And we invite you later, tonight or tomorrow or whenever, you can go there and see the story. So Moon is the bowl of the dipper. And she spends most of the winter in her den, which we know as astronomers as Corona Borealis. So you can imagine the Corona Borealis being the den of a bear. And she comes out in the spring and starts going through the forest. The other residents of the forest are not happy with her presence. And they decide to pursue her. And it turns out that the hunters are birds, they're all birds. And the first bird is the robin. I'm gonna try saying the name in Mi'kmaq, Jibjoej. And that's the first star in the handle. The second star is, the second bird is chickadee or Jijigay. Actually, and that's Mizar and Alcar are kind of a double star, and the Mizar is, the chickadee's Mizar. Alcor is actually the birch bark pot that the chickadee carries that eventually is used to cook the meat from the bear. So there's even a role for that star. And I'll carry on here. Gray J is the last star in the handle. And then what we do is we jump over to Boötes. Now the Mi'kmaq didn't recognize these constellations as Ursa Major and Boötes. They just saw these stars and created the story with the stars, which is sort of overlaying the Mi'kmaq version on top of the Western version. So the next star is, or the next bird is the passenger pigeon, which is sadly extinct. And then the blue jay, and then the last 2 are owls, Arcturus, or the barred owl, and the saw-whet owl. So those are the 7 bird hunters. Now here's an interesting part of the astronomy of this story. At our latitude, when these stars cycle through the seasons, the first 3 hunters, the first 3 stars are circumpolar with the bowl, but the last 4 stars or 4 hunters are not. There's a period of time in the summer when they set. I'm sorry, sort of late fall, but they set. And the interesting part of the story is in the story, 4 of the birds get lost on the chase, and only the first 3 are the ones that stick with the bear. So that portion of astronomy is actually contained in the Mi'kmaq story, which is a really interesting feature of this story. Here's a picture. The background here is a picture I took of Comet Neowise on my birthday, July 21st. And you can see the Big Dipper there. And over to the left, at upper left, you can see the other 4 stars. I framed this picture so that all the stars of Moon and the 7 bird hunters were going to be in the picture, as well as the comet. So this is kind of my fun picture from the summer. Now, I'm going to go back to Cathy and ask her to say a few words about the role of storytelling as a means of keeping knowledge in the Mi'kmaq culture.
Thank you, Dave. And I loved what you just did, because I've been hearing that story for many years by Elder Merdina Marshall. And it wasn't until Dave and I were talking, and he helped me to understand what was happening and what the constellations were. So, and I would highly recommend that you check out that video on the YouTube page, because Elder Medina Marshall is no longer with us, and that's a story that's near and dear to our hearts and the hearts of our people. So the more that we can share that story, that's what, when we talk about storytelling and passing down stories from generation to generation, that's how we do that. We see and hear stories that are so important to our culture, and we continue to teach our young people, and so they can pass the stories down, and we don't lose those, because they're so important. And it's one of the things that I am most proud about with the work that Dave and I have done, is that I've been working through the moon times Dave's about to talk about with Holly. We spent a year of our lives and continue to do so, recognizing the moon times of our ancestors. And she now knows them. And I taught her month by month, moon time to moon time, I should say. And to have her now sharing the stories with her classmates in school, and sharing those stories as part of our presentation tonight, that's exactly how our ancestors would have shared information and kept the culture alive. So, it's one of the things that I didn't quite understand until a little bit ago. And I said to Dave, my gosh, we have other young people who have done artwork for us and been part of this. And it's exactly how we share. So I think when it comes to Holly and her part in this project, that is the thing that I'm most proud of, is that when Dave and I are no longer here sharing this, she will be. And that's why it was so important for me to pass on that torch to her in sharing the story in the beginning, because she will be doing that in the future. So Dave, would you mind sharing with us the moon times?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I have to do a little bit of review. This is pretty basic astronomy, but and everyone should know this, but it's always worth reviewing it. And so one of the important cycles that we have is the year. The length of the year, 365.25 days, which is the time it takes for the Earth to go around the sun, and which defines the seasons for us here in Canada. I'm not going to dwell on this, but of course we know that, axial tilt is the reason for the season. And you get summer, winter, spring, and autumn. So that's kind of a review, but that number is going to come back, because it's a very important, that is the number which defines the cycle of the seasons and the coming and going of the different activities in nature. So the Mi'kmaq basically see the year divided into 12 sectors. And I've sort of overlaid some information here, which this is the two-eyed seeing. What I've done here is I've overlaid, the longitude of the sun as it goes around the ecliptic, and I've divided up into even angles of longitude. Now, the Mi'kmaq did not do this. I'm doing this. What they saw was they had a very relational view of these times, because they connected them with activities that go on in nature. So starting at the top after the winter solstice, and we're going counterclockwise, because when you look at the North Star, that's the way the stars go. So the first sector or period or moon time is the frost fish time, which is when the tomcod go upstream to mate, and they can fish. The next moon time is called the bright sun time, or the blinding time, because of the bright sun on the snow. The next one is maple sugar time, or springtime. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the Mi'kmaq recognize these patterns. I've divided it up into longitude, and the idea is this is how we present it now. If the full moon occurs during one of these periods, then the name of that moon time will be the name of the moon. So if there's a full moon in that period, 5th of January to 3rd of February, it'll be the frost fish moon. Now, it doesn't matter where it appears in that sector, it's still the frost fish moon. The actual moon time will start with the new moon and end with the new moon, with the full moon in the middle. So these dates are not fixed times for the Mi'kmaq. In fact, they didn't use the Gregorian calendar. They would have just seen the moon and said, okay, this is the frost fish moon, and the next one we know is going to be the bright sun time, and so on. So here's an example of two-eyed seeing, where I've taken that traditional view and I've overlaid the astronomy on it, so we can kind of see how they overlap. Here's a table of those names and dates. For obvious reasons, Cathy likes the diagram better than the table, because I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she likes the cyclical nature of the diagram, the graphic, because it goes on and on around in a circle without beginning or end. So here's all the names of the moon times in English and in Mi'kmaq. And you'll notice that all of the moon times have some relation to what's going on in nature at that time of year. And that's how the Mi'kmaq would see it. You know, they would see the birds laying eggs, they would hear the frogs croaking. That's a big deal here in Nova Scotia, hearing the peepers. The trees coming out of the trees, the shedding of feathers, all of these things have been happening this year. And we tell people about them, and people look outside and they see these things happening. It so happens that today is the first day of the mate calling moon. The full moon will be on the 1st of October. And by coincidence, because it's the full moon closest, or the new moon closest to the equinox, for all of our members of the Hebrew faith out there, it is actually Jewish New Year. And that is based on the moon as well. So there's these cross-cultural connections. Did you want to say anything about the cycles of the moons, Cathy? Because you have a special way of looking at it.
Yeah, I would say I always like to tell the story of me learning about astronomy. I worked, as I said, at Kedji and a national park here. And when we became a dark sky preserve, part of my job was to then give programs to the visitors on astronomy and culture. And I always say I got out the books. I went to the books right away and tried to understand it. And I knew I hit rock bottom when I bought Astronomy for Dummies, and it still didn't make any sense to me. And then I saw this this diagram from Cape Breton University, and I knew I could get on something I could see happening in front of me. I could relate to and instantly connected to, because it was happening around me, and it allowed me to then reach out to Dave to then ask, okay, if this is happening around me and I'm connected, help me to understand what's happening above me. And so I had this deep connection with around me and above me. And that to me, I always say this in the closing, but I guess I'll touch on it now. You all are astronomy buffs, and I love that. And I wish I could see all of your faces. But if you are introducing astronomy to children or people like me who know very little and are just looking for an opportunity, and I wrote down the mission statement because it's exactly how I was. I was not an astronomer, but I was looking for a way to learn and looking for a way to connect. And I always say to people, just look up and around, and you can focus on the rest of it as you wish as time goes on. And it also helps for me in my case. I had an astronomer on speed dial, so I was able to spend hours and hours with Dave a day asking questions. But once you make that connection, then it opens all kinds of doors. And for me, it was this diagram that allowed me to have that connection and then build on that.
Okay, thanks, Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to get the idea that this is all a one. You were asking questions and I was giving you answers. I had a lot of learning to do as well about how the Mi'kmaq culture works. And I had lots of questions. And one of the things that I had to learn was to be able to hold different views in my head at the same time, because you would talk to different people and they would have different points of view about the origin of things. And I was always trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong. And Cathy taught me that this isn't the way to look at it. You have to kind of accept the teachings and just kind of hold them in your head and try to figure it all out. And it was very difficult until I realized that as a physicist, I had to accept that light is a wave and light is a particle. And I swallowed that back in the 70s when I was studying physics. So if I can look at light as a wave and a particle and hold those ideas in my head at the same time, then I can hold these other ideas, these cultural pieces of cultural knowledge in my head and think of them that way. So anyway, thank you, Cathy, for teaching me that. So what we want to do now is a lot of people say, we don't understand how to say those words. And so we did a project where we got Curtis Michael, who's a language teacher, and we recorded very short videos with Curtis, just teaching people how to say the names of the moon types. It was a really cool project. And the RASC supported this through a special projects fund, I should say. Thank you, RASC, for paying for that. And if you want to go and listen to that, what you do is find our YouTube channel, and it's easy enough. You just go to YouTube and search on Mi'kmaq moons, and you'll find us. And I should say the artwork here for the seasons, that's done by Autumn McDonald, who is she's a young Mi'kmaq artist. I mean, she's only, gosh, I don't even know. She's around Holly's age anyway, maybe a bit older, but she's quite young. And we gave her first paid gig to do artwork. So she was quite excited to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out and I'm going to get Curtis to introduce himself and see if I can do this without messing up again. I'm going to try to get Curtis to introduce himself. This is one of the videos we made. Oh, here we go. I'm screen sharing, and here we go.
Curtis Michael,
Is that good?
My name is Curtis Michael, and I am from Sibiganegadi First Nation. I went to high school at Hanseas Rural High in Milford, Nova Scotia. Also attended Teachers College in Truro, and I took a language course at Cape Breton University. I'm a retired language teacher here in my First Nation. On my father's side, I belong to the Bukaralan clan. On my mother's side, I belong to the Moose clan. My mom and dad are originally from Eskasoni, but I grew up here in Sibiganegadi. I did win an award back in 2013 from Inspire. It was in the category of culture and traditions. Thank you for watching this video. I'm glad you took the time to learn about the Mi'kmaq moons and our culture. Walalio. Thank you all very much.
Curtis is a great guy. I got to know him really well. I didn't know him very well when we started this project, just like on Facebook. And I called him up and I said, I want to do this project. And I went up and visited him before we did the videos, and spent some time with him to work it all out. And just to make sure that, you know, this was going to work. And then when we went back with Haley Davies, the videographer, and we spent, you know, like a better part of the day doing these videos. And he's just a super nice guy. And, you know, he was really good about doing the language videos. But when I said, you know, we need a video about you talking about yourself, he had a real hard time talking about himself. But I basically had to ask him questions and get the answers. And then we had to sort of edit it all together, you know. And, but because it's very common that Mi'kmaq people don't like to, I've noticed they don't like to brag about themselves, you know, they just, you know, and Curtis is the epitome of that. He's a great guy, he knows a lot, but he, you know, he doesn't want to be called an expert or anything like that. But, you know, in my books, he's an expert. So let's do one, let's give you an example here of one of his things. Okay, I got to get rid of that. Is Holly laughing?
She could be.
Okay, are you seeing this one? Nod if it's coming.
We goose, mate call and moon. We goose. We goose, mate call and moon. We goose, the mate call and moon.
So that was an interesting one. That's the moon time that started today, and it's going to be the mate calling full moon. But other people are going to call it the harvest moon. But that's the interesting thing. The Mi'kmaq were hunters and gatherers. They weren't farmers, so they didn't call it the harvest moon. Their most important food source was the moose. So the mating of the moose to them was the most important thing. So like I say, you should be able to go to our YouTube channel and see all of those videos, and they're only about half a minute long. And now I'm going to a book where we've written a book, and we've written 12 stories about each of the moon times, and the stories are conversations between Holly and Auntie. And now it's out. The secret is out. Is Auntie is Cathy, and well, Holly's Holly. And the story we like the best is the bird shedding feathers time. It's not the one that's now, but I was thinking of, and we had these pictures with them with the feather, and so we thought, why not read that story? Because I think it's a great story. So take it away, Cathy.
Yeah, so this is my first time sharing this story in a meeting. I've not done this before because it's so personal to me, but I decided that this is full circle in that, you know, we started this journey, and I look at what's happened now, and we have these beautiful photos. We have Curtis Michael, who has done videos for us, keeping the language alive. And we've just come, and we have a book being worked on. So it is something that I look at now, and I think, you know, we've come so far, and this has always been a safe space for me. So I'm going to share this personal story that you will find in the book that's yet to come, hopefully soon. One warm summer day, Holly came to visit her auntie. Look at this pretty feather I found. I'm seeing feathers everywhere on the ground these days. Oh my goodness, Auntie replied. Do you know what you have there? It's an eagle feather. That is so special. Wow, an eagle feather, that's cool. But why are you so excited? Auntie became serious, as she often did in speaking of Mi'kmaq culture. The eagle is the highest flying bird and represents the connection of the Creator with our people. The Creator sent the eagle as a messenger down to the hero Glooskap on Earth. The eagle gave Glooskap a feather to remind him of his responsibility to care for the earth and to be honorable and truthful in all actions. Being given an eagle feather is a sign of high esteem. The feather is sacred, not only to Mi'kmaq, but to First Nations everywhere. I picked it up because it was so pretty, and I remember you held an eagle feather when Grandpa passed away. You put the eagle feather in his casket when he was buried. Yes, I did, Auntie replied. Remember when you laid down the feather on Grandpa's casket and we looked up and saw 2 eagles flying ahead? That was such a beautiful moment, her auntie said. It sure was, Holly explained. I always think of Grandpa when I see an eagle flying. Auntie, there's even an eagle that fishes in the river near my house. What a wonderful reminder how special your grandpa is to us, Auntie said. Hey, do you want to know something else special about the eagle feather? Sure, but I want to ask you about all those feathers I saw. Okay, we'll get to that. But first I must tell you this. You know how people sometimes go to the courthouse to testify before a judge? Well, I've seen it on TV and in movies, but what has that got to do with feathers? Before anyone testifies, they have to swear on oath to tell the truth. Some people just promise they will, and many put their hand on the Bible to swear. But now in Nova Scotia, you can ask to hold an eagle feather instead. What else did you want to know about feathers? Why do birds shed their feathers at all? Why not just keep them? Feathers keep a bird warm in cold weather, and feathers on the wings and tail are needed to fly. So all the feathers must be healthy and strong. Over time, feathers can become weak or damaged and heavy with dirt, so the bird sheds them and grows new ones. But why do I see so many feathers now? Are all the birds shedding feathers? All birds shed at some time or another during the year. Now, in midsummer, the songbirds have built their nests, laid their eggs, and raised their young. This is a good time to rest and feed, shed their old feathers, and grow new ones. Before long, those birds will be flying south and they will need strong, healthy feathers for the flight. Holly thought for a moment about this eagle feather. I just found it and picked it up from the ground. No one gave it to me. Auntie smiled. Well, one way or the other, it was meant to be yours. Be sure to take care of it. I sure will, said Holly, holding the feather close to her heart.
Thank you, Cathy. That was great. So in that story, we combined a personal experience, but we also folded in some natural science in there. And that's what our book is all about. What we do is we do this two-eyed seeing where we have these conversations between Holly and Auntie explains the not only the cultural importance of the moon time, but also they get into the science of what's going on in nature around them. So this is a really fun book to write. We had to do a lot of research to write all this. And I'm particularly proud of that story. And we can't wait till it's available to share. We post these stories on our Facebook page, actually, every moon time. So if you're interested in the stories, just go there. And we've gone through a whole cycle, so they're all there if you look for them. Well done. Okay, back to some astronomy. We buttered you up with a nice story. And now we're going to get into the moon cycles a bit. So the time between full moons is about 29.5 days, and it's shorter than a typical calendar month of 30 or 31 days. And that's important for what follows. So on the left-hand side of this diagram, we see how the Mi'kmaq look at the moon times through the year. You know, there's the whole cycle of the year. I haven't put in the the names of the moons. But the Mi'kmaq see these moon times one after the other, with the full moons in the center of the moon time. And from year to year, where those moon times sit on the Gregorian calendar moves around, but that's not matter. They're always about the same time of the seasonal year. On the right hand side, this is the way we look at it in the Gregorian calendar, our civil calendar. The months are fixed against the seasons, and the moons are disconnected. The full moons are disconnected from the months. And so you see there, the full moons could appear anytime during the month. And they could be at the beginning, the end, and every year is different. So there's no connection between the months and the moons anymore. And there's an interesting thing coming up, actually. It's a bit of a fluke, but this October, there actually is going to be 2 full moons in the month of October, one on the 1st and one on the 31st. But this is just an accident of our calendar, where the months are longer than the synodic period of between the full moons. So from time to time, you get these double moons, but it has no real significance, no astronomical significance. So that's, in a nutshell, the difference. Oh, by the way, that's Pope Gregory at the top there. Oops, sorry. That's Pope Gregory, and over here is Cathy's, I think, is it your great-great-grandmother, or how many greats?
4. Great, 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 great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so so it takes a bit of mind shift to get your mind around the moon times versus the months, but that's what we're teaching people. Let's do a little math. I know people hate math, but so what happens is, if you have 12 moons of 9.5 days, you only end up with 354 days, and that's 11.25 days short of a year. What happens is, after 3 years, if you just use a 12 moon cycle, you'd be a whole moon time behind. Well, this won't do, because the moon times have names that are associated with things happening in nature. So sometimes you have to add in an extra moon time in order to get back on track. And but you can't have 13 moons every year, because that would make the error in the other direction. So what you have to do is, you have to sort of combine periods of 12 months and periods of 13, and over time you can keep things more or less on track. And then again, the Mi'kmaq didn't look at it this way. They just kind of saw what was going on in nature, and if they saw the moon times were getting out of whack, they would say, we have to do something. We don't really know how that was done, but the most likely idea was that if they found that the moon's times are coming too early, they would just repeat one and say, look, this is too early, we got to do this one again to get back on track. And in fact, we did that this year. In 2020, there was a full moon on the 5th of June and the 5th of July, and both of those lie in that sector of longitude, which is designated the trees fully leaf time. And so we decided to say, we're going to have 2 of those in a row, because if you don't do that, then all the subsequent ones are far too early. And you end up with, where things are just totally out of whack. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I think you've probably seen this kind of argument with other calendar systems based on the moon, but we did do 2 trees fully leafed moons this summer. And we put it out there that this is what we were going to do, because we don't know how it was done traditionally. So this is our 2-eyed seeing explanation. And we didn't get people seem to accept it, and we didn't get anyone coming along and tell us we were wrong. So that's going to be like this is going to be the working model from now on. And we have another story coming up. And we're going to finish off with this chief moon story, because this is an important one as well. And I don't know if you can see, my battery's getting low. I'm going to go off and get my thing to plug in my computer while you tell the story.
Yeah, I think two things. I will tell the story very quickly, recognizing that we're at 9:30 right now. But the other part of that is Dave and I are always open to new teachings and new ways of seeing. So, you know, if there's anybody ever watching who has anything to add on the moon times and the way things were seen, please reach out to us. We don't claim to know it all, and we are looking for opportunities to learn more. So, Moon Chief. Long ago, in the old times, there was an old man who could no longer go hunting. When he was young, he was a great hunter, and there was always food in his wigwam. Now that he was very old and weary and could not hunt, he and his wife were often hungry. One winter, they had very little to eat, and at last, one cold night, there was nothing left, not even an old moccasin that they could chew. The old man knew that they could not live much longer. He said to his wife, "Look out the door and see if Moon Chief is out tonight." The old woman crawled out to the door and lifted the flap. "Yes, Moon Chief is out," she told her husband. The old man crept outside the wigwam and stood in the deep snow. He looked up at the moon. "My friend, how are you tonight? We in our wigwam are not very well off. My wife and I have no food. In the old days, you remember, I was a good hunter. I killed the moose and the caribou and chased them through the deep snow. Now I am old and cannot hunt as I used to. Will you help me, Moon Chief? Send a moose to my door." The old woman heard him talking. She called out to him, "What are you saying out there in the dark?" And the old man told her, "I am asking Moon Chief to send a moose to the door." Early the next morning, the old woman went to the door and looked out. Lying in a snowbank beside the wigwam was a big moose. She called out to the old man, "Wake up, wake up. Moon Chief has sent us a moose." The old man awoke, took out his bow and arrow, and killed the moose caught in the snow that lay against the wigwam. So it was in the old days, if a man asked Moon Chief for the things he needed, believing that Moon Chief would give him what he asked for, to say, "I will try, Moon Chief, see if he won't send me a moose," that will not do. Only if you feel you are bound to get what you ask for will Moon Chief send you whatever you need.
Thank you, Cathy. So this story about the Moon Chief, I didn't get it right away because I was trying to figure out what it meant. Initially I thought, you know, there's nothing in here for me. It's just a nice story about people trying to get through the winter and so on. But there's no astronomy in it. But then I thought about it for a while. It took me a while to figure this out. But of all the moon times that we have listed, all of them relate to things that are going on Earth. So there's the spawning of the fish, there's the running of the maple sugar, the peeping of the frogs, the birds shedding feathers. All these things are earthly things that are happening around you in nature. And then you get to the one that's at winter time, near the winter solstice. And it's called Uchigus, which is great moon or moon chief moon. And I said to Cathy, you know, it's the only one that's not earthly. It's up there in the sky. I mean, yes, it's cold and food is scarce, but the old man is appealing to this spirit of the chief moon in the sky, and it sets it apart from all the other ones. And then I started thinking about the astronomy, about full moons and suns. In the winter solstice, the sun is lowest in the sky, and the days are very short. And any time of the year, a full moon is essentially doing the opposite of what the sun is doing. The full moon rises when the sun sets. It sets when the sun rises. It's high in the sky when the sun is low, and so on. And I realized that of all the moons of the year, the one that's closest to the winter solstice is the highest full moon of the year. and it's the longest in the sky and gives the most light. And in distinction to that, the one in summer is very low in the sky, and you can see the numbers on here. I won't go through them, but if you play around with Sky Safari or something like that, you can convince yourself of all this. And then it struck me that if you were going to pick one moon of all the 12 to be the chief moon, or to be a powerful moon which has agency and that you're going to appeal to, that would be the moon which is in the sky near the winter solstice. So that, to me, that's the two-eyed seeing interpretation of that story, of appealing to this spirit, appealing to this power in the sky, which is the chief moon. And it took me a long time to figure it out. I haven't seen that explanation anywhere. But there you have it. So in a nutshell, that is kind of what two-eyed seeing is all about. It takes the strength of one tradition and marries it with the strength of the other. And by looking at things from both points of view, you come away with a deeper appreciation for both. So I just want to end up by telling you where you can find some resources. We've had some publications. The Griffith Observer is a magazine put out by the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. We won a science writing competition a few years ago, and we got second prize. But the guy that got first prize, I always say this, the guy that got first prize is a repeat offender. He enters many times, and every time he's like a pro. Every time he enters, he wins, and he happened to enter that year. And so we got second prize. I told Cathy if he had taken the year off, we would have got first prize. So. Anyway, I got permission to reprint that. So if you can go online to the Journal of the RASC, February 2017, you can read the whole thing exactly as it was in the Griffith Observer. And in fact, it was a result of that article being shown to a publisher that a publisher has asked us to write a book. We didn't go looking, they came to us. And anyway, we'll let you know. We finished the draft text. We're just trying to illustrate it. So we do have a Facebook page. Mi'kmaq Moons is what it's called. And we have a YouTube channel. And there's constant new content every week, almost every day sometimes, on those channels. In fact, Cathy doesn't even know this, but the video of Holly reciting the Song of the Stars, today I put it on our YouTube page, our channel. And I also included the words as subtitles while she's talking and in the description of the video. So if you're interested in the words of that story, go to our YouTube page, and that's where it is. So those are the resources that we have. In a nutshell, I'm not going to go through all of these names, but we could not do this ourselves. There's a whole community here of Mi'kmaq people who are following us and supporting us, and there's non-Mi'kmaq settlers, I guess they're called. I am a settler because I came from England, so I'm truly am a settler here. So there's settler folk and there's indigenous folk who have been involved in this project that we're very appreciative of help. And I would just like to say that I just came up with this idea earlier on this year, and I don't know if I'm off base, but I was saying to Cathy that, people talk about reconciliation between indigenous people and others, and they talk about land claims and money and different things. But I say, by doing projects like this and respecting each other's culture, I think is another component of reconciliation. We've got a network of friends and followers who support what we're doing. I've met a lot of really great people through this project, and that makes me feel good. So, and I've learned a few Mi'kmaq words like Wilaliog, which is thank you. Cathy?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking as Dave was talking, and I'm just going to say one more quick thing, and then I think we'll take some questions and wrap it up. But I was asked, Dave asked me to do the guest editorial in the Observer's Handbook. What year was that, Dave?
2016, it was my last one.
Yeah.
I was worried they might fire me, so I did it on my last one. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did the guest editorial, and I just want to share something about my dad, is that my dad passed away 3 years ago, and you know, he was following what I was doing with Dave, and when Dave asked me to write this editorial, I wrote it from my heart, and he edited it and made it great. And I remember getting a copy of the book, and I gave it to my dad, and he thought I was famous. I had hit the jackpot, and this was, you know, the best thing that could have happened to his daughter. So I want to thank all of you for that opportunity. And as I said in the beginning, this is a place where I have always felt wanted, and created such great opportunity for me. And that's the great audience and the great people of the RASC. So I wish he could see this now. We've evolved since that editorial, but again, we always want to recognize where we've come from. So usually I end things off and do a little inspirational talk, and I think that's what I'm going to leave everybody with, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Cathy. I just want to correct you on one notion. You said that I made your editorial grade, and I want to correct you because I'm an editor and I have that right. It was already great. What I did was make it fit.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I said, I need you to write 600 words. And you said, oh, I couldn't possibly write that many words. And I said, well, just try, you know. You gave me 900 words, which fit on the page that she had. And I said, you know, I can't give you a page and a half. There's no way. So I had to rewrite what she said and make it fit, but without changing her voice. And I think that's what I did to your editorial. Yeah. I made it fit. Okay, so now we're ready for questions.
Yeah, so the first question came in on the Q&A from Jayan. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Who wanted to ask Cathy, are there any cultural protocols or such that you follow with elders or others as part of your project?
Yeah, that's one of the things that Dave and I take great pride in. Is we've met some great people along this journey, and elders who have been supportive of the work we do, and who have guided us along and continue to do so. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, in that we are always open. We are always wanting to learn more. And if anyone were to approach us or to give us a different way of seeing things, we would honor that with the greatest respect. And you know, we have been so lucky to have the people around us and those within the community who are creating this place for us. And what we've noticed too with our Facebook page is we have had, you know, so many people within our Mi'kmaq community who are learning about this as well, along with us. And that is so inspirational, because I didn't know this growing up. I certainly wasn't aware of this type of timekeeping for our people. So, you know, we're teaching people along the way. And again, it's that instant connection that people have to, this makes perfect sense to me, right? I have a deep passion for what's happening around me and above me. And it's created this environment within our Facebook page and our everyday lives where people are coming together and people are appreciating this way of knowing and this way of seeing. So, you know, with the photo shoot that we just did, so many people come up to me and thank me for those beautiful pictures that we have, because as Dave said, people were wondering who Holly and Auntie were. So I think what I have learned from my elders and the people that share with me is to be open and to be respectful. You know, I always worry about that whenever Dave and I are doing presentations, and we prepare so much for what we're saying, because, you know, this is a project near and dear to our hearts, and it's something that we take very seriously, and what we say and what we teach. So, you know, there's always that worry. But what I have learned, the biggest lesson that someone from our community has taught me is, you know, when you speak from an open heart and a good heart and honest heart, right? That's what it's all about. And, you know, you speak your truth, you speak your experiences, and you speak from the teachings that you've been taught. And, you know, that sets the foundation for learning and teaching.
I think I'd like to add a little bit to that. What have I learned? And how do we have, what protocols? One of the first things that Cathy taught me when we had our very first meeting, remember Cathy at Tantallon Library? When, you know, it was halfway between your house and my house, and we met and we had our first working meeting where we were going to talk about the project and what we were going to do. You brought me a little cloth bag with a tiny bit of tobacco in it, and you presented it to me, and you taught me that this is what you do. You bring small gifts to people to show your appreciation. And I've picked up on that. And now when I go, like for instance, when I went to Curtis, the very first time I met him, I know he had a large family. He has like 10 kids. Yeah. And I got in the car and I went over to the superstore. It was before Christmas, and I got a big case of mandarin oranges, and I went to his house, and he came in, you know, he let me into his house, and it was a big honor for him to let me come to his house. And I brought him a case of oranges for his family. And it was just a simple thing, but he really appreciated that. And he also recognized that I had learned that custom. And you know, every time I go, I always take something. Mm-hmm. And of course, when we did the videos, you know, he got an honorarium for sharing his knowledge with us. Mm. And so that's something you taught me, and I've always carried with me when interacting with First Nations people.
Cathy, first of all, thank you for sharing that, all your sharing, and especially your story about your father. I appreciate that. Very nice to hear. I do have a few questions that I put online there. I hope I don't dominate with them. What are your seasonal or ceremonies associated with nature? Like, there seems to be a connection there. Have you got cultural ceremonies, like in Canada, we have Thanksgiving, you know, Easter, and then of course Christmas, which is, some of those are religious too. So what ceremonies do you have? Or what
yeah, there are some, and we welcome anybody who has, you know, more knowledge of that to come forward and share. One of the things that I do, and I'm going to miss this year, is the Harvest Feast that happens in Acadia First Nation in Yarmouth every year. And we come together and we celebrate, and we have a feast, and we have drumming, and we have dancing, And it's a way to come together to celebrate that time in life. Also, another thing I want to mention, because Curtis taught me this, and it's something that Holly and I have been doing since he passed on this teaching to me, is to feed the moon, the full moon in February. So I was in a language course with Curtis, and he passed this on as a teaching that in the full moon in February is when our people would take food out and feed the moon and thank the moon for providing us in a time which, you know, food was scarce and things were hard to come by. So those are two things that in my life I have taken part in and celebrated those two very specific things. There's also a bear harvest feast that used to happen and possibly still does in Cathy as well every fall. So it's the coming together of our people and celebrating those specific times. But I would be very interested to know if, you know, other people have celebrations and ceremonies that they do throughout the year as well. So we welcome that. Those are three of mine, though.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions from anybody by whatever means, texting or verbal?
Yes. So Gavin Hill sent in a question as well. So he wanted to know if you had any advice for other centers who wanted to connect with Indigenous peoples in their area. He was specifically referring to the Hamilton Center and who would love to connect with the Mohawk community.
Well, maybe I should answer that. It can be difficult, but you really, you have to find that person, that special person who is willing to meet you halfway, I guess. Cathy was that special person for me. And I know there's a lot of distrust between Indigenous groups and others. So it's a very personal thing. But once you find that person, then you just have to start working with that person. And it doesn't come quickly. It takes a lot of time to do it. I don't know. Our project is very special. I don't know how general it would be, but it has been successful for the reasons that Cathy said, you know, mutual respect, patience, making the other person feel safe. There are no stupid questions, those kinds of things, you know. But it comes down to having two people who can connect in that way, and that's what makes it work.
And if I can add to that, Dave, it's about, you know, really wanting that partnership and wanting it for reasons that you're passionate about. And, you know, that's one of the things that with Dave and I working together, we came together wanting to learn from each other. And there's no other purpose for this project and what we do other than we are passionate people. We are people that truly want and care about the subject matter and want to pass that on. And so if I would say anything, it would be to, you know, want a partnership for all of those things and have a true partnership. You go in with both eyes. And it takes a lot of time. Dave and I are sitting here seven years later, maybe even more, and still have this passion for what we do and still have a respect for one another. And I think that's the biggest thing. And keeping keeping that alive. And I think that's happened because, you know, we wanted this. We truly wanted to create something for my people, for all of you, and just a way for people to learn about both of us and both of the backgrounds that we've come from. So to have that honesty about what we want to do, and to respect, you know, that this is an equal partnership, that I feel, you know, 50, I'm one eye and Dave's the other eye. And never it comes a time when I feel that, you know, we are being pulled in more of his direction or he's being pulled in more of mine. And so we meet in the middle, and we make this work. And that can be very hard to do. But when you're open and you're honest about why and how, then it will all come together. Dave and I do presentations and we do things, and all of a sudden something else comes out of it, because we are doing this for the right reasons, and it is important to both of us. And the passions that we have come pouring out because it's a true, authentic partnership that we have. So you have to be open to that, and you have to be open to working with someone and meeting them halfway. And I encourage for people to take our model and make this work within their organizations, because it is the true way that we're going to come together. And I couldn't do this without him, and he couldn't do this without me. We've tried to do presentations. Dave has tried that I couldn't attend, and it's not the same. We are a true team, and it's taken us a long time to get there, but it's possible with open and good intentions.
Very good. Okay, there is one more question. I'll try to ask someone else a question. From Jennifer. Do you think there are communities between commonalities between astronomy stories for First Nations across Canada, or do stories vary greatly for different communities?
You want me to answer that, Cathy?
Yeah, and I just will give you notice, Dave, that my phone's at 20%, so
Okay.
it cuts out. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to answer this because it came up in the research about the moons and me trying to figure out. There's a really great paper that was written back at the beginning of the 20th century about all of this. And if somebody pokes me, I'll give them the reference. But what you will find is that there's a lot of commonality, but at the same time, there's a lot of regional distinction. And I'll give you an example. Almost all of the First Nations people in North America follow some kind of a system like this with the moons. They tell time by the moon. They recognize the moon cycles. The names for the moons reflect what's going on around them, because people live in different circumstances. You know, you go from northeast of North America and the northeast woodlands, and then you can go down to the southwest. It's a totally different environment, totally different cycles. So what you find, the commonality, is that the Indigenous people give names to their moons which reflect what's going on around them. And that varies from place to place. So it's kind of cool because it's the same, but it's different. And you can sit down and look at lists of names of moons, and you can see little things that are common, but then they don't line up again. And even, I think, from one end of Nova Scotia to the other, you can find this. We've had, I wouldn't say fights break out, but we've had people saying, oh, no, we don't call it that, we call it this. And then we're realizing that, you know, Escazone up in Cape Breton is different from Bear River down in the southwest, and people didn't travel all that much, and they developed their own traditions and their own names for things. And so as a scientist, I had to wrap my head around this and try to figure it out, but you can see a pattern in it. So that's what I see in the moons anyway.
Thank you. That's great. That's helpful. Well, if there's no more stories, we do really want to just thank you very much again for both of your presentations. I really think it was outstanding.
I think it's the best one we've ever done, actually.
And I hope your video works for you.
Oh, we'll see.
But we really do appreciate that, and I consider us privileged to have had you both